All right, so I've had a lot of parents reach out to me about schedules. It's difficult to sometimes understand what is going on, especially in high school or middle school. Some of the schedules that students come up with, or actually the schools are running, are a little wonky and sometimes difficult to understand. So let me just give you a breakdown of three basic types of schedules that are pretty common these days. The third, not as much, but it's becoming a little more common. The first is kind of a standard schedule, right? And this is what I had in high school, and this is what most other parents had in high school. The idea is basically you just have the same schedule every day, right? First period is math, second period is history, third period is science, and you go throughout the day. And Monday is the same as Tuesday, it's the same as Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's just standard. And that's what most of us are used to. And I think where the confusion lies is we've started moving on away from that in a lot of districts and a lot of schools to block schedules or rotation schedules. So, okay, let's talk about a block schedule. Block schedule is basically a schedule where you have some of your classes some days a week and the other classes on other days. So a typical block schedule might look something like this. On Mondays and Wednesdays, the student has math and science. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the student has English and history. And so you just rotate. On Mondays and Wednesdays, English, on science and math. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, English, history, and it just goes like that. Now, because you have less classes each day, you're going to have more time with your instructor. So the benefit of a block schedule is you can get more done in class. So there's a few benefits. Number one, and I like block schedules, by the way. I'm a little biased, but I like spending more time with the students, and I think we can get more done in usually 90 minutes than you can in a typical period, which is 45 minutes. By the time the student gets in the class and they settle down and this and that, you've already lost, a few minutes. So, it's nice to have that big block of time. That's what's called a block schedule. So you're gonna block off an hour and a half with a student, like I said, every class. And the nice thing about the student, so A, you can get more done as a teacher, but B, what makes it more exciting for the student is they get to really focus on a few classes for a day. And the amount of brain energy it takes to, quickly reprocess class to class to class, they don't have to do that as much. So it's not like your brain has to switch to 8 different classes every day. You're sticking with 4. So, the student can say, okay, Sunday night, I'm doing my homework for tomorrow. That's just math and science. On Monday night, they say, oh, well, I'm doing my homework for tomorrow. That's English and history or whatever. So it allows them to kind of focus and hone in on the class. It makes it a lot easier for them to not have to compartmentalize as much. So it's a little easier on the students, and frankly, it's easier on the teachers. We get more time to work and do stuff, and spend more time with the students on the skills that we're developing. Okay, so that's number 2. Now that's a block schedule. A block schedule, even though the days are different, they're the same like each day. So Monday is the same as Wednesday, or Tuesday could be the same as Thursday, and it's the same week to week. It doesn't really change. Now there's something called a hybrid rotation. And the idea behind this is the third one. The idea behind the hybrid rotation is that students' brains are wired differently at different points in the day, right? You are a very different person. I can speak for myself. I'm a very different person at noon or 1 or 2 than I am at 7 in the morning or whatever it is. So the idea is that if you always have math class at 8 in the morning or 7:45 in the morning, or you always have history at 7:45 in the morning, that student may be tired. They may not be thinking on with all the cylinders at that point. So the idea is, what if we actually rotated the times of the class? So you have math on Mondays. You might have math class first period. On Tuesdays, math is second period. On Wednesdays, it's third period. On Thursdays, it's fourth period. And the idea is it rotates. It kind of goes throughout the day. So you're having similar classes. You could do this in a block, by the way. You could also do this in a standard schedule. But the idea is that if you rotate the times of day, it's much easier on the students to be able to kind of change their mindset and say, okay, well, maybe I'm really tired on Monday for math, but like it's not so bad because on Tuesday, I can be a little more refreshed or whatever it is. So by changing the time of day that you have a period, it often just changes the way students they approach the class and the way they think and how functional they are at different periods of time. And by the way, sometimes it goes the other way too. Sometimes you don't want a period really late in the day. You're already tired by that point. So, it's not always first thing in the morning. It could be that you have math class last period every day and you're just like exhausted by that point. And so by rotating it throughout the day, you actually feel pretty good. It doesn't mean every day you're going to feel great, but the idea is that any time-bound problems you have, like I'm really not myself right after lunch, or I'm really not myself at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, the idea is that it's not going to continually keep hitting the same class over and over. You're going to rotate through. So your best periods mentally and your worst periods mentally are going to kind of shift throughout the throughout the week. So you're going to have a much better fighting chance of putting together a very good, approach to your academics and your calendar. So what would I do as a recommendation? Ask your student to share a Google Calendar with you. I've mentioned this in other videos, but have them put their schedule in there so that you can see it. So you know that your student had, math today, or they had physics yesterday, or chemistry tomorrow, whatever it is. And you can help stay on top of, the work they're doing, or ask what's going on. And instead of just saying, hey, how was school? You now have the ability to ask much more pointed questions. So like, hey, what did you do in chemistry today? Or how was lab? Or, hey, how's algebra going? And the idea is that you can do that when you know the schedule. If you don't know the schedule, you're fighting with a hand behind your back, right? So it's very hard to get that information. So anyway, those are the three major types of schedules. The rotations are not as common yet, but they're starting to get there. And I understand why people are doing them, and it makes sense. You want your kids refreshed and kind of cycling throughout the day. But you generally find it a little bit more confusing because, is what it is. But they all have benefits. They all have drawbacks. But whatever schedule your kid has, just make sure you know what that schedule is. Make sure your child knows that schedule too. It's not always intuitive, right? Especially for freshmen or sixth graders or seventh graders, if it's your first time in middle school or high school. A little tough to kind of get the swing of things, especially if it's a schedule that's a block or rotating or hybrid or something that's maybe a little different than what you're used to. So help them out, they'll help you. And as long as you know what's going on, things will be great. You'll be able to ask all the right questions. But those are the types of schedules that I'm seeing more often these days. Until next time.